Hello and welcome to this episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Mignell. This is part of my 29 Days of Magic series where I interview an amazing Black woman every single day for 29 straight days. And today I am super delighted to have Charece Williams, who's a leading brand and sports marketing executive. She's so brilliant. I cannot wait for you all to hear her amazing story. Take a listen. Hey, Charece.
Hey, girl.
How you be?
I'm good. I'm listening here thinking like, wow, she wants to talk to leading women in marketing and different advertising, different spaces. And here I am speaking to someone who is really at the top of her game. And I'm grateful that you're creating space for us.
Well, as I said, doing 29 Days of Magic is my love letter to Black women, but also just reminding people how dope they are. Because oftentimes folks are so knee deep in the work, they haven't had a chance to kind of look up and look back all the great work they've done. So I think it's just really important to create spaces so folks can have those moments to remark upon their awesomeness.
Yes, love it.
And so diving right in, first question, always same, answers always hilarious. Sure, it'll be no different. So Charece, what was your first job?
My first job was at Wendy's.
Oh, and what did you do?
Well, the typical, ran the register, but I really loved the drive-through. You got to see folks' personalities. Some very strange things happen that I don't really want to get into sometimes, but I loved working the register, but I also had to learn how to cook. So making burgers, I can tell you exactly how the burgers are lined up: white, red, green, mayonnaise, green, lettuce, and then tomato on top of the burger. Like, I remember those things just like it was yesterday.
That's amazing. Okay, so I do love Wendy's fries. Did you have a chance to, were you ever in charge of the fryer?
Yes, of course. And the best thing to do back then is when the fries came out nice and hot, Wendy's doesn't have these anymore, but you get one of those chocolate chip cookies, and then you get yourself a Frosty, and you got a whole lot of things you shouldn't eat at one time. But how delightful to have hot fries, warm cookie, and cold Frosty.
Oh, and then you actually dip the hot fries in the Frosty.
Absolutely. And when you're 15 and your metabolism is off the roof, you can do it every single day.
Oh, how I miss those days. Oh, to bottle that up and then use it now in my 40-plus-year-old body would be so amazing.
Oh my gosh. Yes. But
have that energy. Oh my God.
I'd get a new wardrobe every day if I did that, because pounds be sticking to me nowadays.
Yeah, I know the feeling. Okay, so we go from being a superior fry maker at Wendy's to having a chat with me now. What has that career journey been like?
Wow. How much time do we have here? It's been such a diverse time in my career. So one thing I've always known is that I wanted to have a career that had something to do with sport. That was clear. I was a high school and collegiate athlete. I come from a family of athletes, and I got to see different areas of how sports impacted people positively, mostly. And so I knew I wanted to have a career in it. And what that career was going to be, I wasn't 100% sure. And so after I graduated from college, I went to grad school and I got an MBA and a master's in sports business management. But the reason it was such a significant time in my career is because the program I went to at the University of Central Florida made it a point every week to have leaders in the sport industry come and talk to our class. And I got to learn about college athletics, professional athletics, brand, property side of things. And it gave me just such a wide view of what could happen that I chose to use my early career to kind of bounce around in different parts of the industry to cut my teeth and figure out what I was good at. So if I were to give a quick high level, I did property side work at Disney's Wide World of Sports, at Walt Disney World. I was on the agency side at Wasserman, leading clients like American Express and Wells Fargo. I did a stint in nonprofit with the National Basketball Retired Players Association. And then I really grew and took off in my career, my side, in the brand side of things, where I worked at PepsiCo Beverages for almost 7 years, Under Armour, and the Coca-Cola Company.
Damn. You've seen the entire universe of sports. It's on the brand side, on the agency side, on those key important campaigns and moments. What do you think is probably the best lesson you learned from all of those diverse experiences around the sports world?
The best lesson that I learned from those diverse experiences was what I hated to do. I know that sounds crazy, but it's very easy to get into a job because the title looks good or the company looks good. But if you don't really understand what you like to actually do on a daily basis, then the job may not fulfill you or you may not succeed. So I realized, for an example, that I needed to solve problems. Like I'm not a data entry person. I am a problem solving person, which means I need a business challenge, which means I need to have the resources to consume more information to help get to a great solution. And I need to do that with other people. I'm not a person that wants to work isolated by myself, right? So even learning that, something simple as that, could help me understand what sort of jobs or career would work well for me. So yeah, for me, the most important thing I learned is what I didn't like to do.
Awesome. And now talk to me about a time when you're like, okay, I have this challenge. There's no way I'm getting through. And then you did.
Hmm. Which challenge should I use here? Because challenges are always aplenty when you're trying to navigate these corporate spaces. Because if I were to answer this like off the cuff, I would share, and I'll just share it in case nothing else comes to mind. But one of the biggest challenges that I've dealt with in my career is overcoming difficult personalities. And what I mean by that is not that other people are necessarily difficult, but you vibe with who you vibe with, and sometimes you don't. And I definitely have experienced in my career where there may be a person or a group of people who perhaps, I'm not their cup of tea. And because of that, may have impacted how they perceived me. And the perception, obviously, making things feel real to them could impact access to information, how well a project can go, and all those sorts of things. And when you learn something like that, you're not really sure how you got there, but you need to overcome it, obviously, because at the end of the day, this is about your working experience, your ability to get the job done. With trying to get closer to a connection to people who just may not be checking for you. And that is difficult when you're trying to be your authentic self and you really don't know why folks are like that. But that's kind of part of the challenge and part of the solution is getting to know people who are different, understanding, maybe they wish they could be more outspoken or confident, and that's something that you have. And a solution might be to help amplify their voice in meetings. And perhaps they see you as someone that helps enable a personality or a skill that they don't have naturally. And then all of a sudden, you're someone that's seen as someone that can help them versus whatever perceptions and experiences they were wanting to harbor before.
I think that's a good one. Because it's oftentimes like, folks, you have the power to help push people forward. Please do it.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me that people have a individualized mindset going into work projects. I mean, I know we're there for our own careers, but at the same time, you can't get anything done without other people. Hey, and also, hello, we're all different. No company brought us in thinking that we were all going to offer the same exact idea and strategy and execution styles and all that. We're meant to bring all of these things and our true selves to work, but yet people don't want to embrace others and they want to just cut people out. And it doesn't make sense because, quite frankly, companies need all of us in order to do the work and to do it well. So I've always been a proponent of amplifying other people's voices and ensuring that people diverse opinions and experiences are brought to projects because honestly, it's what makes it better.
It really does. I think, when you're in those positions, oftentimes it's really hard to like get your voice to be heard. And then you're like, well, wait a minute. Well, if we had done just followed my advice, look what we were able to do. Throughout my career, I've seen so many things where I was like, I told y'all.
But you can't say that now.
Right. I mean, you can't say that. And it's like, how do you navigate that universe where like you really want to be like, I told you so, but you can't do that. And I think especially for Black women, it is like, we have a triple-edged sword against us. We're Black, we're women, obviously we're the smartest person in the room because we have to work twice as hard to get in this room. It's an ongoing challenge for us throughout our careers.
Yeah, it definitely is difficult. And it's one of the reasons, for better or for worse, like I have a high expectation of other Black women when I am at organizations or working on projects because not that we're a monolith, but oftentimes we are having similar experiences or at least have people in our circle who may have similar experiences, which means we understand how difficult it can be. So I have a high expectation that other Black women would be supportive. And support can look like pulling you to the side and saying, hey, girl, like, I don't know if you know, but that one over there doesn't quite like that. Just letting you know so you don't do that again. That could be a form of support and love. Or it could be, again, amplifying voices in room, celebrating people in public and not just behind the scenes and private texts. Like all those things can make a difference. And I definitely expect more.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point because I think celebrating people publicly is a big thing that I think is so very important. And I know that having been a leader for now well over a decade, I do this deliberately on purpose because I oftentimes don't see anyone else doing it. I'm like, what is wrong with you? Like that person did an amazing job. Shout them out. You have a platform. And two, because I want them to see that it's not just a monolith, that we're not all the same. Like how I approach the way that I do things different than the way that you approach things and the way somebody else does things. But we all are Black women. So if I'm seeing you do something good, I'm going to shout it out. If I see a competitive agency run by a Black woman doing dope shit, I'm going to shout out, but look how awesome this is. Because we should be able to do that and not look at it as a threat, but like, because when you do that, if you lift up all the other boats, you all ride the wave together as opposed to having people fall off.
Listen, people just be wanting to swim against the wave, I guess. I have seen some things sometimes, which is disheartening, but it's all part of learning. I also believe that not everyone is for everyone. And so having some discernment around who to trust and to get close with is also important. And some people just are who they are, and you have to leave them in their misery.
Exactly. Later for you, and we're on to the next. So, obviously you're at this interesting intersection of sports and brands. And obviously women's sports right now is exploding, which you and I have talked about. We saw coming. We have eyes. I think a lot of folks, especially from the brand agency folks, have fallen behind and don't know how to catch up. So in your opinion, what should brands be doing when thinking about how to tackle the rise of women's sports in the most authentic and smart ways possible?
I mean, authentic and smart are the keys to that question. Because here's the thing, perhaps every brand does not have authentic place or space to play in women's sports. Not that you can't creatively find something, but maybe it's not for you. And that's okay as well if this moment passes you by, because I'm sure there's other things that you could be doing. So I think I just want to state that because I think everyone's trying to jump on board and maybe it's not for everyone. But I always go back to, and this is the brand marketing side of me, like what does your brand stand for? Who does it stand for? Like, what are your proof points that you can let any consumer know so they actually understand who you are? And then you look at the women's sports landscapes, whether it's the athletes, whether it's the leagues, whether it's, some other part of it. Then you ask yourself, does this actually align together? Do we fundamentally have things in common? Can we help one another? Like, it's really as basic as that. And I think that a brand, and I know they're doing it, but as they take those steps, they'll be able to, I think, have a better chance of understanding whether or not they could jump into women's sports. The other thing I would say, and this is what has really worked well for me in my career, is truly understanding the partners that you may be working with. If you ask any partner that, I've had in the women's sports space, they'll tell you that I didn't bring a cookie cutter opportunity to their athlete or to the property. They know that I understood their business and their brand and truly found something that was mutually beneficial for both. And that's why the partnerships flourish. That's why these people are friends now that I work with, because we really help to build each other up. And I think that's another thing that brands have to really consider is, are you doing something that only benefits you? Or are you really considering the partner that you're trying to work with?
I think it's a big, big, big piece of this is that it's a partnership. It's not a one-way street. It's that like when you're working with a brand and you're working with an athlete or a property, how does this become cyclical and not just a one-off? But how do we see like long-term, this makes so much sense because blah. Like I've seen, Ally Bank has been 1000% in for women's sports and sponsoring Unrivaled and being on I think soccer teams as well, but really putting their foot in the ground because also this is about money, and I think
Yeah,
like women are the CEOs of households.
Yeah, that is something I should say that I learned early in my career when I was in the consulting side at Wasserman. As I mentioned, Wells Fargo was a client. I knew way back then, early career, that women were running the household financial decisions. So, which is why, as you and I talk about women's sports, I saw this coming because they've always been in control. So, I think that's a valid point that businesses need to understand that it's not a charity, event to sponsor something that's related to women. It actually make great business sense. And if for some reason it doesn't make great business sense for you based on the product or the service that you offer, again, it's okay to let it pass you by. There's probably other things that you could spend your money, time, and attention on.
It just process, but it requires thinking and understanding, where we are at this moment. I think, I was listening to something and they were saying like, women have never been more powerful than they are at this particular moment, in spite of the world crazy circumstances, in terms of managing the household, managing their own lives, having their own money, but also having their outlets for their own voice, which is obviously social media.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big change when it comes to sports, because I remember that like it was Sedona Price, I think she was from Oregon State, at the Final Four, 3 years ago?
Yeah, 2020.
Yeah, who showed what like the men's gym looked like and what the women's gym looked like, and how horrifically terrible the women's was compared to like the men's, and how that went viral. And I remember thinking to myself, well, that's interesting.
I mean, listen, I am glad that things have corrected themselves. So I'll start there on the positive side, but not surprising. Again, someone who's been following women's sports as a former athlete, I've noticed those disparities, and it never made sense. And I do find it very ironic. Perhaps I'm a little bit biased, but I'm pretty sure the numbers would say this. The female athletes are really the ones right now that are scoring and winning in this NIL era. And I think it's because women have always known that you have to connect with your fans, because again, we weren't getting what we deserve, but we know that we have to give more in order to get more, right? So these female athletes are like the social media winners when it comes to brand partnerships and NIL, and these teams are doing magnificent things because women work differently, harder sometimes, to make sure they connect. And it's just so beautiful to see how they're starting to reap the rewards in this collegiate NIL era.
Yeah, I think NIL has changed the game in so many different ways. When you see that like the top NIL athletes are female athletes.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that pay disparity begins to start to dissipate. It doesn't go away, but it starts to dissipate. But also, it was Diana Taurasi I was watching this morning, was talking about like, you get to follow the stories from college. And there is something interesting and really kind of beautiful about the storytelling that gets to be told like when they're like a freshman, and then now all the way to the WNBA, to Unrivaled, to their ads, what have you. And I think that folks forget that like with the advent of social media, women are better storytellers. Think about the most viral things on TikTok, whether it be the dances or those like Risa Tisa, who told those stories? It wasn't.
You would know best. I will definitely agree with you. Like, women are doing some things there that people are just locked in on, and to the point of people following the stories from collegiate to pro. Like, it's the reason. Like, one of my really proud career moments was something that I did in connection with Asia Wilson and with Mountain Dew, and I was at PepsiCo, because Asia became the first WNBA athlete that Mountain Dew had signed to an endorsement deal, and that's something that I worked on behalf of PepsiCo. But when I was signing her, we signed her in, I don't know, 2017, and then we activated her at NBA All-Star, I want to say February 2018. Don't get me a line on the dates, but my point is, NBA All-Star was in Charlotte, North Carolina. Asia Wilson is from Columbia, South Carolina. So am I. So I knew that the difference between Columbia and Charlotte were like 100 miles. I knew that Asia's collegiate fan base were 100 miles away, and probably some in Charlotte as well. And I felt like, we can bring her to NBA All-Star, and she's gonna be a draw. She's gonna be able to really maneuver in the space and have people there for her. And then that happened. And it was honestly one of the first early days of when WNBA athletes were being activated at NBA All-Star. And that happened because, again, I understood the connection between the collegiate fan base and the WNBA fan base and the NBA fan base. And I knew that they would come for her. So I think that is something that's a key differentiator on the women's sports side versus the men's.
I love that. And that's what it is. As I said, like there's, everyone has a different story, but if you tap into those really unique and beautiful nuances, you'll go and win. like, like that's what's going to happen. People will travel. Like this is the thing. It's like if you look at it, what do gymnastics parents do? They travel. What do soccer parents do? They travel.
Yeah.
So
For sure. And again, just back to business then. So just leveraging Asia as an example again, like she went on to play Las Vegas Aces, where she still is multi-year MVP and champion, right? But I remember something else we did at PepsiCo is we ran a promotion in the Carolinas, and fans were entering to win a chance to go out to Las Vegas to support the Aces in Asia. And when I tell you, like, it was such a successful partnership. And when I also tell you that when you go to South Carolina games, sometimes you'll see like, Aces jerseys and vice versa. And even the Aces picked up on that. I just a couple of seasons ago, they had like a fan experience like ahead of a game at South Carolina because they know they now have Aces fans in Columbia, South Carolina because of Asia. So people like really pay attention. There's so many dots to connect, and this the power that female athletes have, it's really unmatched.
it's really, really fascinating. And I think it's only going to continue to grow. And because again, folks have many tentacles, many stories, many things outside of the sport that they play. And it's going to be fascinating to see where it turns out. So obviously you're doing all this really great stuff and you're working on these different awesome brands and partnerships and all great stuff. But what does Charece do for Charece? What do you do for your self-care?
Well, I try to get regular massages and facials. So I was definitely off of that path for a while. But in the past 3 months, I have had them regularly scheduled every 2 weeks. And that has been amazing to help reset my body and have me feeling fresh. I also like to work out. I am an Orange Theory gal, definitely striving to get my 12 splat points every single class. So that keeps me going. It fuels my, I have a competitive spirit. So seeing how many splat points I have versus the person next to me or over there, that keeps me going. And those are the main things that I can really kind of fall back on. I'm sure I got to come up with some more stuff to help me out, but those have been the ones that have been helping to sustain me as of late.
Listen, every little bit you do for yourself and put yourself first is the most important thing here and is necessary, especially in these unprecedented times. So, and thinking about like again taking care of yourself and finding those little windows are so very important. What advice would you think you'd have for 18-year-old Charece?
Well, for 18-year-old Charece, I would just tell her to be confident, and I would let her know that none of her dreams are too big. She can achieve anything that she sets out to do, whether it's already been done or not, or whether she has to like chart that path because it hasn't been done, because the world is in need of confident Black women who can bring their creativity and life experiences and smarts to the table to help change the world and change the game.
Awesome. I love that one.
I wish I would have known that, girl. I had to fumble my way into some of these wins, but we're here now. We are here now. But I will definitely be pouring into the next Charece.
Yes, it's like letting all folks know about like how it's not a straight line. It's a crazy ass journey, which is fun. But yeah, lessons that you can give back to the younger generation, like, please do this, are so necessary, because the more that we can help, ground and give foundation to that younger generation, the better it actually is for all of us ultimately.
Right.
That whole lifting all boats together is a thing. Do you have a give and or an ask of the audience?
What do you mean give or ask? Like as advice?
It can be advice. It can be, here's a great book I read. Here's an affirmation I know. It can be anything you want.
Okay. So my advice would be to not only find like these releases, places where you can practice, self-care. I think that's extremely important, but also as important is identifying and knowing like where your strength is, like what actually keeps you fueled to where maybe you don't need all the reset devices, as much. And for me, I am a woman of faith, and I can definitely say that I have varied in terms of my time and attention as it relates to my relationship with God. And when times I've been less focused, that's when I've been more susceptible to the things and the ways of the world. So I would say that for whatever that space is where you find your strength, where you find like your clarity, whatever tools you may use, ensure that you keep that at the forefront, because that's what's going to keep you covered and keep you strong before these things come at you so much that you need the self-care to help recharge yourself.
Well, that's beautiful. My goodness.
I'm just keeping it real because, that's what life teaches you. When you look back, I think you have to recognize where you may have gone wrong or gone down a path or, could have done something differently. I think that self-awareness and the self-accountability is so necessary for your own growth and also to help maintain and build relationships. People have to know that you're real and you're not perfect. So for me, like growing and getting better and understanding what helps me operate my best self is important. It's such a huge part of how I can get things accomplished. And so when you know better, you do better. So I just think it's important for people to think about things that way.
I think it's perfect and so necessary. I think, again, this idea that you have to do all of this stuff all alone, and there can't be some other guiding faith that you can sort of tap into, whatever that might look like.
Mm-hmm.
But it is important to remark upon, okay, mistakes I've made, and also ask for that guidance when you need it. And again, to whatever that deity might be.
Right.
It's so necessary, because I look back at some of the things in my life and I'm like, yep, that was God. Yep.
Okay, because
it's like, I didn't get the thing I wanted. I'm like, well, actually, start the damn boat here.
Yeah.
So it's
Definitely.
It's so great.
And you know what? I think that, I've always had some, level of self-awareness and, just again, knowing about my relationship with God and what he has done for me. But I will tell you that becoming a parent is definitely something that will humble you because you just are never ready for it. You don't have all the answers. And so when you're in a situation where you can't educate your degrees don't help you, your work experience don't help, like the child is going to do what they do. It really makes you draw on some strength to move forward, but then also just realize that you're not going to get it right. And that's okay. And, everyone's going to keep living and breathing and growing. And so parenthood has also been something that has helped me really evolve, as a person.
I love that. That last question, I feel like I think I'm setting up for the answer that I know is going to be. What's one thing that brings you joy?
Yeah, I think even Stevie Wonder knows that. Yes, my love bug, my 4-year-old Jackson is everything to me. It's such a special honor and privilege to be able to steward his life and help him understand who he is and build his confidence and learn new words and have new experiences every day. Like, it is such an awesome honor and something I take very seriously. So, while I don't have it perfect, I certainly am connected to the right resources and use my instinct, which I realize is pretty darn good, to help grow and help him grow eventually into being a big boy. Because I'm not even ready to call him a little boy now. He's still my baby, but he will grow up into be an amazing person. And I'm just happy I have a chance to be a part of it.
Aw, he is the cutest. Gotcha. And that's so awesome. I think, for all my friends who have kids, it's funny. Everyone says that when I ask this question, everyone says their kid. Because it's the joy. And it's been a joy having you on, Charece. I mean, I adore you, and I am so glad we finally were able to get you on the podcast.
I know. Hanson, it took me dropping off a few weights, some things off my back, dropping a few bags off to have some time to really dig into this. So I am grateful for that.
Awesome. And we'll put details in the show notes for folks to connect with you. And like I said, you've done so many awesome things in your career, and it's really cool that you got a chance to spend some time to share that with our audience and with some awesome lesson learns. And so I thank you so much, Fran.
Thank you.
Awesome. And that is our show.